It's time now for Countywide, a special presentation of Yavapai Broadcasting News. Join Paul David and Kyle Benedict as they talk with our community's leaders, newsmakers, and people in the know. You'll hear about the hot topics that affect all our lives in Yavapai County. And now here's today's Countywide.
Welcome to Countywide. I'm Paul David. As always, it's great to have you in studio with us today. Al Cornell's back with us with Yavapai County Search and Rescue, but I think you're more of our local survivalists that we bring in at least twice a year. Welcome back, Al.
I'm glad to be here.
Good to have you.
I can help.
The reason I called you is we typically have you come in fall, early winter to talk about precautions we should be taking while we're out hiking. And we've had a couple of stories over the last couple of weeks. One that comes to mind is we had a couple of gals who went off on a hike, and they told family we're going to go hiking on Mingus Mountain or Granite Mountain. And that to me was like the first mistake. Okay, so which one are you going to go to?
That'd be a big difference.
Right. And then their cell phone died after they called 911 for help, so there was no assistance in getting a GPS location from their cell phone. So the cell phone battery died. I know we've had Dwight Devlin with YCSO several times on the air, giving us sound bites talking about how you should always have your cell phone fully charged. Yeah. And now we're recommending even having a backup battery that's fully charged in your pocket or your pack or whatever it is you're carrying. But it seems like no one's quite, we go out for these hikes, as we always talk with you about, Al. We go out on these hikes, it's a beautiful day, it's maybe 65, 70 degrees, it's really nice out, and then the sun starts to go down and we're lost and we don't know how to get back out, and then trouble really starts to begin.
Let's go back to the cell phone real quick.
Let's do it.
Something I learned from somebody that I hike with. He uses a GPS. Then one day he says, you know, my new iPhone can navigate for me. It has GPS in it. So he went to use it instead, and the use of it as a GPS, halfway into the hike, it wore the battery out. And he was stunned. He had no more battery, no cell phone, nothing. And it completely caught him by surprise.
There's trouble right there. Yeah.
So there's, you have to know what you're doing when you're with those playing with the, technology.
Right.
And this is a case where he should have had a cell phone for communication and a GPS for navigation, and he would not have had a problem.
Right.
And he learned his lesson. He said, I'll never use it for hiking as a GPS again, because I had lost my ability to communicate.
I see my phone do that all the time. You know, I'll pull up a video or pull something else up on the phone other than just using it for a phone, and you can just watch that battery go right down.
Yeah, amazing.
Yeah. And then you've got the camera on there, video cameras on there, all that stuff is on there. So while you're out hiking, you're using that, you're draining it.
Never thought of that, but that's true.
And I guess if also too, like if you get on an airplane or like a cruise ship, it's always good to turn your cell phone off because it's always going to sit there and look for a signal.
Yeah.
And so that's going to drain the battery as well. So we kind of mentioned that there was a couple of mistakes made right off the bat. And you had a good question for me just before the show. And you said, when does the emergency begin?
When does the survival event start?
When does the survival event start? And I said, once I realize I'm lost. And you corrected me and said,
it starts when you decide at home you're going to go for a hike.
Okay.
It starts right then.
I'm in my house. I'm going to go for a hike. This is
It's too late when the event starts to decide, geez, I didn't bring this and I didn't bring that. What am I going to do to start a fire? What am I going to do to protect myself against this rain? It's going to get dark. I have no light. It's too late. You've got to. Survival starts at home.
What should we be thinking about this time of year?
The biggest threat is exposure, cold weather. So you need to be thinking about. I say three things. One is the preparation. Make sure you have the right clothing and have it set aside so that you can just grab it and go. I'm talking about polypropylene or polyester. Nice clothing that can wick body moisture but retain body heat.
Okay.
Because body thermal regulation is what's going to keep you alive.
Okay.
So have a nice a couple inner layers, a middle layer if you want, as another thing that retains heat and also protects you from cold, and then an outer layer that shields you from wet or from cold, and also shields you from rocks and thorns and things like that. So clothing first, and then you want to have a pack that's ready for the wintertime. You need to have ability to do a fire, ability to set up a quickie shelter. You need an ability to signal for rescue if you do have a problem. I mean, you might have all the gear you want, and you fall and break a leg. You're not going to walk out. So you better be able to signal. And signaling is a signal mirror works really well. And if you flash a signal at a helicopter or an airplane, they'll report it. They might not be able to come over to help you, but they will report the flash.
Okay.
And a fire at night will attract searchers. We found in my time many a lost person at night because they had a fire or had some way to signal us with light. A couple times it was cameras flashing. So preparation and then the plan. Make sure you leave and get back before dark. Make sure you leave with someone knowing where you're going. And it can't be, well, I might be on Mingus, I might be on
Granite Mountain.
No, it's got to be pretty specific. And then dark comes and you're not back, they'll call the authorities for you. And make sure you have some stuff with you when you get stuck out there. And I just have a few items here that are nice to have, but gee, you need a couple garbage bags.
I was going to ask you this first. Now, when you say these are some things you should have with you, I think to myself, I got a 60-pound pack on my back, and I'm going out for a little hike. So that could be very discouraging to people. But
sure.
You've weighed the stuff that you carry with you.
Yeah, I thought about that.
Okay.
After you called and said, "Come on over and let's have a talk," and I said, "All right, just basically, if I were out there, and I'm feeling confident I'm not going to have a problem, but you never know." And I've helped people that have fallen and broken a leg or an ankle. Nothing to do with their abilities at all. Just it happens. A rock rolls or something. So it's nice to have something besides the clothing. And if it's cold, nice to have an extra layer in your pack. But a couple trash bags are wonderful. Because you can wrap up in them or you can make a shelter out of them. These emergency blankets, I think they're like $3 or $4. You can wrap up in these and they'll retain about 90% of your body heat.
Okay.
Wrap up in one of those. A lighter. I always carry 2 so you can start a fire. And of course, anything that gives you immediate flame, that's what you want.
And you mentioned too to make sure they're see-through so you can see what
I like
fluid
these
is in there.
see-through. And like I said, I bought these 3 lighters for $1 here in Cottonwood.
Could save your life.
So, I'm not a smoker, so they'll last forever for me.
Right.
I used to tell people, you get lost with a smoker. They'll always have 2 lighters. Always.
You got a flashlight with extra batteries?
Yeah, I have a flashlight with batteries, and when I was years ago, I didn't consider this a primary item, but I do now because it's really difficult to operate at night until you get the fire going and everything without a flashlight.
Okay.
So just something simple like this, some cord, parachute cord, so you can rig up your shelter. Even a small knife like this is sufficient. I like a bigger knife like this one. I got it taped the edge so it doesn't cut my other things, but and a whistle and a mirror if you have to signal for somebody. But all of this stuff, I added it all up, and it weighs 1 pound 6 ounces.
So there you go, 1 pound 6 ounces. So we're talking about if you have
that includes the toilet paper. It includes a first aid kit with bandages, scissors, tweezers, Neosporin in there, and all that stuff. And any meds you need to carry need to be in there. And,
you got a small can for melting water or snow and ice and stuff?
If you don't need that so much down here, especially if we're going to be out, and once we get the call to go get you, we'll get you probably within 4 to 8 hours. Even most difficult searches, we generally rescue people in the first shift of 8 hours.
Right.
Yeah. So we're not talking about a lot of expense, and we're not talking about a lot of weight.
Right. So
people have to kind of step up and say, all right, I don't want to be careless about this. I'll take some minimum stuff, and I'll take a fully charged cell phone, and I'll be fine. I have a problem, I can call, I can get help. And we're more than happy to come out and help you. And we come out and help you at no charge. There's no charge for search and rescue in Arizona.
Right.
So, and we do over 30 operations a year in this area, my unit alone.
And we wanted to make sure we mentioned that today too, that if you are lost, call 911. Search and rescue will come find you, and it's not going to cost you a penny for them to come and save your life and get you out there.
You'd be surprised how many people, when we do rescue them after a 911 call, we find out they have called their mother, or they have called a friend back east, or they've called their wife in Phoenix that they're lost, instead of calling 911 first. We rescued.
I guess that's key too, right? 911. We have to take a break. Al Cornell in studio today. We're talking about just some safety tips for your winter hikes. I'm Paul David. This is Countywide. We'll be back in just a couple minutes.
Let me ask you a question. When you think of the American Legion, what comes to mind? Is it our volunteer programs that let wounded veterans know they're not forgotten?
I'm here to make sure our heroes know their sacrifice is not forgotten. I am the American Legion.
For nearly 100 years, the American Legion has been our nation's leading advocate for veterans and their families.
I am the American Legion.
This is today's American Legion.
To learn more, visit legion.org.
As an American, it's hard to hear that we have a serious hunger issue in our country. And as a parent, it's even harder to hear that 1 in 5 of our kids struggles with hunger, especially when billions of pounds of good food are wasted every year. Feeding America is a nationwide network of food banks that helps provide billions of meals to families in need right in your community. Visit feedingamerica.org to support Feeding America in your local food bank. Together we can solve hunger. Together, we're Feeding America.
How are your girls?
Stacy's good. Maggie, she's just gotten so angry. I don't know any of her new friends. And we found out she's gotten into drugs.
It's probably just a phase.
Most people don't know what to say about drugs.
Yeah, she'll outgrow it.
But we do. Visit us at drugfree.org.
Welcome back to Countywide. Al Cornell in studio with us today with Yavapai County Search and Rescue. We're talking about some of the stuff you should have with you while you go on winter hiking. And really, the reason we want you to have these things with you is that confidence in yourself. You were mentioning before the show that when you head out the door and you've got these things with you, as you go on your hike, you're going to see things as you're hiking that are going to make you go, okay, that's probably not a good idea. I call it the what if factor. I always try to teach my kid the what if factor. What if I do this and this happens? What if this happens?
Yeah. Your antenna go up.
Right.
They just, and it's almost subconscious. When you do these preparations, you can't help but put a couple trash bags in your pack and you're thinking shelter, and you're putting a couple lighters in there and you're already in the back of your mind thinking fire. And then when you're out there hiking and you approach something and it doesn't quite look right, when in doubt, there is no doubt. And when you have a little bit of preparation, your antennae are up higher and you start backing off. Because you don't want to have to use these things.
Right.
You don't want to be in that situation. And it's really interesting how empowered you get. Empowered on the safety side. Yeah, not empowered to be emboldened to go further. You're more empowered to understand your situation when you're out there.
Clothing. You mentioned clothing was one of the things we should think about. Now, I think people think about these big parka jackets, the hoods and stuff, and you didn't bring up any of those things. You talked about the polyurethane.
Yeah, I like synthetics in the wintertime. Right. I like layers that will allow moisture to wick off your body. When you're hiking, you're strenuous, you're sweating. And really, you should kind of de-layer until you feel lightly or moderately cold, so you're not sweating. But if you are sweating, you want to be wearing things that will wick the moisture away and trap body heat. And polypropylene, polyester, wool are those that do that.
Okay.
And wool, of course, is a thick fiber. And when you make a wool, anything out of wool, except smart wool, the thickness, you're better off having 2 thicknesses of polypropylene to trap air in between them also than the same thickness of those 2 shirts in one fabric. And you're not getting as much trapped air around your body. So, and yeah, clothing.
Wool
good,
cap.
Good point. Good
wool
point.
Cap. You brought up wool cap.
Yeah,
I've always heard that 90% of your heat leaves your body through your head.
It depends on the temperature.
Okay.
I would say out there today, about 50% of your body heat will leave your head and neck. So you need a woolly cap and a scarf, or another thing called a balaclava, which is like a head hood that goes over your neck.
Gotcha.
Okay.
Tucks down into your shirt.
If that temperature goes down to 5 degrees, which you're dealing with in Flagstaff now in the morning, that head and neck area, you'll be upwards of 90% of your body heat leaving. Even though your body, the brain's only 20% of it, it uses about 80% of the blood and heat. And so all this area here has to be protected.
Okay, that makes total sense.
Yeah. And the other thing then is to have a couple layers of wool socks on too. You keep the feet from getting cold. Helps a great deal also.
Waterproof hiking boots are probably a good idea.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But without that, make sure you're using wool socks and a couple layers of them. Mm-hmm. Because even though the wool may be wet, it'll retain heat.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay.
And that's important.
You brought up gloves, and we've talked gloves and mittens before.
Yeah.
Go ahead and grab those, if you will.
Yeah.
Gloves and mittens, I thought that was kind of interesting because I always wear gloves, and when I was a kid, I wore mittens.
Yep.
I couldn't stand them because I couldn't do anything with my hands.
Yeah.
They were pretty frustrating for me. But you bring up a good point with both of them.
Yeah, well, right off the bat, Inuits wear mittens. They don't wear gloves.
Right.
It's cold up there. But, yeah, I did a walk in Michigan in a snowstorm. It was the beginning of December a few years back. And I decided to test this because I'm from California. I'm not that familiar with these kind of things. And when I tell the story to people from Minnesota, they look at me like, well, everyone knows that. But I put a glove on one hand. This is a good snow glove, and a mitten on the other. In the first half mile, the hand with the glove, I could not feel my fingers. Mm-hmm. My hand was like a rock. So I took the glove off, put a mitten on that hand, and said, well, now I'll just keep walking and hiking because I have a good hand and I won't let this hand get any worse. A half a mile later, this hand had recovered in the mitten and felt just like this one. I was just stunned how effective mittens are.
Just by keeping your fingers together with each other as opposed to separated in the glove.
Yeah.
Okay.
So now when I go out get called out on night searches in the wintertime, I always have my mittens with me. And if it's not, and I have them in the back of the car, and if the temperature's like in the 30s or high 20s, I might wear my gloves. If it's lower, I'll put the mittens on.
Let's talk about the temperature. It's typical in Arizona, you said about 30-degree difference between when we wake up in the morning to the high temperature of the day. It averages about...
In our area here.
Right.
That spread is even greater as you go further down into the desert.
Okay.
It'd be 40 degrees or more.
Okay,
Yeah.
40 degrees or more. And you said hypothermia can set in starting at 40 degrees.
Oh, no.
No?
But most hypothermia cases occur between 40 and 50.
Okay.
Because the people are going out in the 70s dressed for 70-degree day. They don't get back in time, gets dark, they get trapped, and then all of a sudden it's 40 degrees or 45. And then they go into hypothermia.
Okay.
And most deaths occur between 40 and 50 because they're unprepared.
See, now I would have thought that 32 degrees is freezing, so that's where my problem begins, but it's not. It's
No.
much warmer than that.
And it's related to clothing.
Okay.
Yeah, if you go out for a hike here in Sedona, and the weather's predicted to be 40 that day, you'll be all bundled up when you go out and start, and then you'll delayer and layer, and you'll be fine. You get trapped out overnight, you have good clothing on. But people go out at 75 degrees, and we rescue them all the time at night, and temperature drops down to 40, 45, and if we don't find them, they're liable to die.
It's big trouble.
Because they're in shorts and t-shirts, or shorts and short cut-off shirt, and it's very common here.
Okay.
Yeah, it's a big shock to people.
Let's take another break. Al Cornell in studio today talking about just safe winter hiking. I'm Paul David. This is Countywide. We'll be back in just a couple minutes.
I think someone at my friend's school has this thing called autism. My friend's brother's son has autism. My neighbor's son has autism. My son has autism.
Autism is getting closer to home. Today, 1 in 68 children is diagnosed with autism. That's about a 30% increase in 2 years. Learn more at autismspeaks.org/signs.
I heard you dropped art class. What happened?
Life happened. I'm too old for finger painting.
You guys going to Haley's thing tonight?
Totes, time to get trashed.
I don't.
That was for your eyes only, Brian.
Baby, if you send it to me, it's public property.
Speak for yourself. Live above the influence. Here's to the things that can keep us safe. Those we use all the time with hardly a thought. Those that are silently standing by to save our lives. And now, those that we carry with us everywhere we go. Many mobile devices will now bring you wireless emergency alerts, real-time information directly from local sources you know and trust. With the unique sound and vibration, you'll be in the know, wherever you are.
Welcome back to Countywide. Just a couple of minutes left in the program. Al Cornell in studio with us today. And something we really want to make sure we mention is, number one, the what-if factor. Make sure you're prepared before you head out on your hike. Number two, make sure you have the proper materials with you. Have some backup stuff with you so you're ready to go. The one thing that I've always noticed, and you said it numerous times here, is when we find them in the dark, when we're searching in the dark, we find them in the dark. And I noticed that we, human beings, have a tendency to, I can find my way out of this mess.
Yep.
And we wait and we wait and we wait, and all of a sudden it's 5:30, getting to be 6 o'clock, the sun's going down, time to call 911. We should probably think about that a lot earlier.
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
And people, I don't know why they're so reluctant. Maybe they don't want to bother people to help them. Maybe
I can
one
see
or
that.
two think they might get charged for it. But no, I think the main reason they don't call right away is they don't want to bother anybody, and they would rather work their way out. And it's easier on us if they call early.
Mm-hmm.
Well, we're just pleased to get a call at 2 or 3 in the afternoon and go out there and to a base and that start passing out the maps, and we get rolling. And then we will find them much quicker in the daylight.
And it's safer for you guys to be out there searching as well. I mean, to be able to see where you're going.
Yep, much safer.
Yeah, much better.
Because there are hazards out there. I mean, there's holes in the ground and lots of sticky, things with thorns and stuff like that.
Sure.
But yeah, it is safer in the daytime. Yeah.
You have a whistle there too, and I know we've got like a couple minutes left in the program. The whistle's really good to have because, I mean, you can really let folks know where you're at.
Yeah, if you've ever tried to call with a voice, after about 6 or 8 or 10 yells, you actually turn hoarse. Your voice will start going hoarse. So it's just so efficient to carry a whistle. And you can get whistles for as cheap as $2. I mean, and they're quite effective. This is a little what they call a windstorm. This is one of the best whistles. And it's probably good for, without wind, no wind blowing, it's probably good for 3 or 4/10 of a mile.
Okay.
And but in all my time searching, I think once or twice has anyone ever carried a whistle. And we're blowing whistles and calling their names. And I remember specifically 2 girls up on Doe Mountain blew a whistle. They had a whistle with them.
That's great.
And they were fine. They had gear with them.
And
the only problem is they couldn't find their way back out.
I want to mention we have like 30 seconds left to stay put. Once you call 911, stay put.
Yes, definitely.
Okay.
We do have an occasional problem with that.
Mm-hmm.
The 911 coordinates might not be right on. They might be off a little bit, or sometimes they're off quite a bit. But please don't move. Stay right where you are. Most of the time, after 2 or 3 calls, the deputy back and forth, the deputy will give the team members the number also. And as we get close, we may make a call and say, all right, we're close, we have headlamps, we're blowing whistles, do you hear us? But please stay put. And even when we see them, we tell them to stay put because we want to walk them out.
Mm-hmm.
We don't want to walk up to them, see them up on a ledge, and they say, oh, we see you, we're going to come down. No, stay there, let us come up to you, and then we'll help you down the best way because they probably don't have light, might be improper shoes, all kinds of problems. So once we get a hold of them, we want to walk them out.
We're out of time, Al.
Okay.
As always, very informative. 1.4 pounds of stuff, and it's going to make you feel better when you go out in the forest.
Yeah.
All right, that's Al Cornell. I'm Paul David. That's today's Countywide. Hope you learned something. Thanks for watching and listening, and we'll talk to you again next time.